31 Tragic and Curiosity Facts about King Solomon, and his lost empire found by archaeologists, and how his death was known as the wisest of the wise. King Solomon is one of the most prominent and remembered biblical characters. Solomon was the son and successor of King David, wealthy, powerful but above all wise. Solomon is always portrayed as an intelligent, compassionate, and analytical character based on virtue. He is distinguished among the 48 Jewish prophets and is also considered a prophet in the Islamic world according to the Quran. In this video, we will tell you the story of Solomon, the King of Wisdom, the last great monarch of Israel, his most curious and interesting data, what has been discovered about his life and reign, and the consequences of his death. Before we delve into it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay up to date with our updates. Number 1. The meanings of his name. The life of King Solomon is mainly told in 3 books of the Bible, the 2nd book of Samuel, the 1st book of Kings, and the 2nd book of Chronicles. His name means peaceful and friend of God, quite accurate meanings for the character of his reign. Number 2. He was the 2nd son of King David. It is estimated that Solomon was born in Jerusalem during the year 990 BC. He was the 2nd son of King David and his wife Bathsheba, but the firstborn in practice. The first child of the couple died during childbirth. Solomon had 3 younger brothers, Simea, Sobab, and Nathan. Additionally, he had 6 older half-brothers, each from a different mother, by his father. Number 3, a peace offering to God. According to the scriptures, the death of David and Bathsheba's first baby was due to God's judgment. The relationship between them started with an adulterous relationship, as Bathsheba had another husband, Uriah the Hittite, who was a soldier in David's army. To hide their affair, David sent Uriah to war and ordered other soldiers to stay away from him and leave him unprotected. As expected, Uriah died in battle. This allowed King David to marry Bathsheba. The death of their first baby was then divine punishment, but the conception and birth of Solomon happened after God forgave the king, so Solomon is considered a divine peace offering. Number 4, designated heir by the prophet Nathan's intervention. According to some historians, Solomon was mainly raised and educated by the prophet Nathan because his father was always busy with the obligations of the kingdom. That's why the selection of Solomon, as David's heir, is attributed to Nathan. Although he was the firstborn of his marriage to Bathsheba, in reality, Solomon had several older brothers, but Nathan had a lot of influence over King David, partly because he knew the full story about Bathsheba and the adultery, and it is believed that he used it to his advantage to convince the monarch to leave the throne to Solomon. Number 5, his reign started with an extensive purge. Of course, David's decision did not go well with everyone, especially Adonijah, David's eldest son and apparent successor. When King David fell severely ill, Adonijah proclaimed himself king. The various power factions in the court faced each other, but Nathan and Bathsheba convinced David to fulfill his decision, and so it was. By order of the king, Bathsheba went to ask Solomon to be crowned king, and Adonijah was killed. Number 6, increased the military strength. One of the main measures of Solomon's reign was to expand the kingdom's military force, especially the cavalry and chariots. He founded many new colonies that also served as military and trade posts. Number 7 is considered the wealthiest of the Israeli kings. While Solomon is remembered for his wisdom, what really marked his reign was the incredible wealth and prosperity that Jerusalem had. Solomon focused on trade and improving the economy, sending expeditions to distant lands to import luxurious products such as gold, silver, sandalwood, pearls, monkeys, and peacocks, among other expensive products for the time. King Solomon had great wealth and is considered the richest and most prosperous of the 3 biblical kings of the Old Kingdom of Israel. Number 8, his wisdom was granted by God. The most outstanding feature of Solomon was his great wisdom. According to the first book of Kings, Solomon made a sacrifice to God, and God appeared to him in a dream. When God asked what he wanted, Solomon asked for wisdom to govern better and guide his population. Pleased with his response, God personally answered the king's prayer and promised him great wisdom. Number 9. The great test of wisdom was the judgment by a child. One of the most famous anecdotes of this king and his wisdom is called the Judgment of Solomon. Two women came before the king, both claiming to be the mother of a small child at the center of the dispute. Neither of them gave in, and both wanted to take the child. In the face of this scenario and the stubbornness of both parties, Solomon made a simple decision. Because both wanted the child anyway, he ordered the child to be cut in half and given to each one. When one of the women heard the monarch's design, she broke into tears and quickly withdrew her claim. So Solomon decided to give the child to that woman, because her compassion demonstrated that she was the true mother. Number 10 is considered to be the author of various traditionally considered biblical books. Solomon is thought to have written several works, some apocryphal and several books from the main Bible, mainly the Proverbs and the book of Ecclesiastes, which are considered wisdom books or books dedicated to wisdom. Number 11. The king who built the Temple of Jerusalem. Solomon is also known as the king builder, as numerous important buildings were erected during his reign due to the wealth and economic prosperity of the kingdom. Cities, palaces, temples, and other buildings were constructed, with the most important being the Temple of Jerusalem. The story goes that the king ordered the construction of the temple with the help of a contemporary architect named Hiram and materials brought from Tyre. The temple became the permanent resting place of Yahweh, the God of ancient Israel, and the Ark of the Covenant. Number 12. Solomon's throne was one of the first mechanical devices. Among the notable constructions of King Solomon was his own throne. It was not only opulent and decorated but also had moving parts and a sophisticated mechanical system for the time. Number 13. He had hundreds of wives and concubines. According to biblical history, Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines throughout his life. The wives were described as foreign princesses. One of them was the daughter of an Egyptian pharaoh, a union that is believed to have contributed to a political alliance with Egypt. The only wife Solomon is named in the biblical account was Naamah, from Ammon, which is now the territory where Jordan is located. Naamah is also the mother of Rehoboam, Solomon's successor. Number 14. His romance with the Queen of Sheba. Among the numerous love relationships Solomon had, a possible romance with the Queen of Sheba always stands out. In the Hebrew Bible, a very brief, shallow, and relatively enigmatic passage is mentioned. It is said that the Queen of Sheba visited Solomon's kingdom with many gifts and offerings, including gold, spices, and precious stones. She left satisfied when Solomon gave her everything she desired, whatever she asked for. According to an Ethiopian source from the 14th century, the Queen of Sheba had intimate relations with Solomon. In fact, Ethiopian tradition has detailed stories about the relationship. This encounter gave birth to Menelik, the first king of Oxim and the first Solomonian dynasty of the Ethiopian Empire, which remained in power for nearly 3,000 years until 1974. Number 15 promoted the idolatry of other religions. Solomon allowed his numerous foreign wives and concubines to bring their gods and beliefs to the ancient kingdom of Israel, even allowing the construction of temples for Astarte, the Hellenic version of a Phoenician goddess, and also a temple to Milcom, the national deity of the Ammonites. Idolatry was punished by God, and of course, other beliefs betrayed the Jewish tradition. Number 16 spoke and wrote in Proverbs. The writing of the biblical book of Proverbs is attributed to Solomon because the king spoke and wrote these ideas in the first book of Kings, and claims that Solomon said 3,000 proverbs. From other kingdoms and nations, People visited Israel to hear the king and learn from his wisdom. Many of the biblical proverbs focus on instructions for living, observations and reflections, almost all oriented towards the importance of seeking wisdom and justice. Number 17, the Song of Solomon. Like his father, Solomon had an affinity for music and wrote many songs, perhaps more than his own father. In the first book of Kings, it is said that he wrote more than 1,000 lyrics. One of these songs is now known as the Song of Songs or the Song of Solomon, which is actually a book of the Hebrew Bible of an intimate character that focuses on the themes of marriage, sex and love. Number 18, trade was important in his era. Much of the prosperity of Solomon's reign was due to trade and exchange with other nations. His kingdom established a system of land and sea exchange that used the army and navy to protect trade routes and goods purchased by the kingdom. The king made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones and made cedars as abundant as sycamores in the lowlands, according to the second book of Chronicles. Among his famous alliances were Egypt, Tyre, Moab, and Arabia. Number 19, Hebrew writings are attributed to him. During the reign of Solomon, most of the texts that were later gathered into the writings or the Torah were produced, the third of the sections of the Hebrew writings. Number 20, Solomon in non-traditional texts. Aside from the Hebrew religious writings and Christian tradition, there are other books attributed to King Solomon. For example, the Wisdom of Solomon is a deuterocanonical collection of the wise sayings of the king. Deuterocanonical means that it is considered religious canon by the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, but is not included in the Hebrew Bible. However, some historians consider that this book could rather be a writing by Solomon's friends in his honor. Number 21, the death of the last king of Israel. Solomon died after a reign of 40 years when he was around 60 years old. He died of natural causes, and his son Rehoboam was his official successor to the throne of Israel. Number 22, although the kingdom was divided despite the period of bonanza and prosperity that extended during the 4 decades of the reign of Solomon, Israel ended divided once the monarch passed away. Rehoboam ascended to the throne, but 10 of the tribes of Israel refused to recognize him as king, thus the ancient Israel was divided into the kingdom of Israel in the north of the territory where Jeroboam, descendant of the revolt, ruled against the kingdom of Rehoboam in the south of Israel. The kingdom of Judah remained under Rehoboam in a much smaller territory than what his father ruled, even smaller than the kingdom of northern Israel. The two kingdoms never unified again. Number 23, the historical discussion of Solomon. As it occurs with many biblical characters, the existence of Solomon is widely debated in the historiographical world. Regardless of his existence, the current historical consensus leans towards the idea that the descriptions of the widespread bonanza of his kingdom are actually anachronistic exaggerations of reality in ancient Israel about Solomon himself. In general, the consensus is that he did exist, although it is really complex to construct or verify a proven account of his life. According to some archaeologists, Solomon may have only been king of a territory in Judah as the development of the North Kingdom was separated. However, a good part of the academics and archaeologists believe this is not true, as there is evidence of a unified kingdom in the 10th century BC. Although many exaggerations about the power of Solomon exist, there is still belief in his existence. Number 24, the vision of Solomon in Islam. Although Christianity and Judaism have relatively similar views about the history of Solomon, Islam, which is probably the largest monotheistic religion with the most differences, also recognizes his existence. Islam considers him a prophet, and unlike the other religions, they do not consider his death as sad. In Islam, the idea of Solomon opening his kingdom to the idolatry of other gods is not accepted. The Islamic version is that King Solomon was temporarily replaced by one of his slaves who ruled in his place. It was not Solomon but a demon who lost faith. Number 25, the mistake of Solomon. According to Hebrew history, Solomon made God angry with his opening of foreign religions. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says that a kingdom must not multiply horses, wives or gold and silver for itself. Solomon sinned in these three areas as, besides his hundreds of wives, the king increased the cavalry of his army and collected large sums of gold as taxes from his kingdom. It is said that the sins of Solomon were punished by God with the renunciation of a good part of the tribes of Israel to the power of his house, meaning the revolt against Rehoboam as the heir was a divine punishment. Number 26, the first modern archaeological find of Solomon. During the 19th century and before this, there were some finds related in some way to Solomon. However, in 1993, the first relevant find of our times was found on a split rock stele in the north of Israel. An inscription was found that commemorated the victory of an Aramaic king over his southern neighbors. This stele specifically has the reference of King of Israel and King of the House of David. This is probably the first direct historical evidence of the existence of the David dynasty in Israel. Number 27, the death of King Solomon. King Solomon died in Jerusalem around 931 BCE, after ruling for 40 years. The exact cause of his death is not known, but it is believed that he died peacefully in his sleep. Some say that he was cursed by God for his wrongdoings, while others believe that he simply grew old and died peacefully. Number 28, the legacy of King Solomon. Despite his flaws, King Solomon is remembered as one of the greatest rulers in history. He was known for his wisdom, wealth, and power, and his reign is often considered the height of Israel's golden age. He left behind a rich legacy that continues to influence Western culture and religion to this day. Number 29, the Temple of Solomon. One of King Solomon's most famous achievements was the building of the Temple of Solomon. This magnificent structure was the center of Jewish worship, and was said to be one of the most magnificent buildings of its time. It was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE and has never been fully rebuilt, but its legacy lives on as a symbol of Jewish pride and history. Number 30, the loss of King Solomon's empire. After King Solomon's death, his kingdom was split into two, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Over time, the two kingdoms grew weaker and were eventually conquered by foreign powers. This marked the end of the United Kingdom of Israel and the start of the Babylonian exile, which saw the Jews scattered throughout the world. Number 31, the continued influence of King Solomon. Despite the loss of his kingdom, King Solomon's influence continues to be felt today. He is remembered as a wise king, a great leader, and a symbol of Israel's golden age. He remains an important figure in the Jewish, Christian, and Islamic faiths, and his legacy continues to inspire people around the world. The stories of King Solomon's great wisdom are a fundamental part of Western identity, visions about leaders and their virtues. Beyond religious tradition, his biblical proverbs, while having a religious charge, are actually life ideas and advice for the secular population. Like his father King David, the stories of King Solomon, and the ancient kingdom of Israel have survived through the millennia and remain relevant today. In fact, we still use his name as a frequent adjective today. A Solomonic solution is used to describe arguments or decisions that aim to satisfy everyone involved in a dispute. We hope this video was helpful. If you have something to add, please share it with us in the comments section. Like this video and send the link to your family and best friends, so that they can also learn more about the curious and tragic life of King Solomon and his lost empire. If you're new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos.